Down, I could tell. I thought you were a lot taller than that.
Okay, let's begin. Welcome to our Mount Shasta City Council regular City Council meeting on November 27th, 2017. And look, you're already risen. Join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Engstrom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stearns.
Here.
Councilmember Sackbluff.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner. Here. Mayor Mortar.
I'm here, thank you. Okay, welcome to our meeting tonight, those of you who are watching live and those of you who are sitting in the audience smiling at us. It's nice to have you here. We'll begin this evening with a special presentation that I'm definitely looking forward to on the latest that is happening with the Siskiyou Arts Council. And we have with us the executive director, whose name is Lugene Whitley. And Lugene, when you are ready, you're welcome to come on up. Please reintroduce yourself, and you have 15 minutes to give your presentation, after which you may get a few clarifying questions from council members. No decisions, but hopefully an opportunity.
Oh, so no asks?
Yeah, don't ask. Yeah.
Could someone be so kind to give me one of these at 10?
Sure.
So I can pace myself appropriately. Will you do that? Thank you, Juliana.
Thanks, Juliana.
As Kathy said, my name is Lugene Whitley. I'm the Executive Director for the Siskiyou County Arts Council. And I am very grateful and honored to have this time with you this evening. Thank you, Kathy Mortar, for inviting me here to speak with the group. I know you have a full agenda. This is a great opportunity not only for the Arts Council to bring you up to date on what we've been doing in the last year and a half or so, but to give you an opportunity to also think about how you and Mount Shasta would like to become more involved with some of the programs and services that we offer to community members throughout the county. First of all, though, I'd like to introduce a couple of people who are here with me tonight. One is Rebecca Brune, who is our Board of Director President. She's bi-coastal now. She spends a lot of time here. She used to live here. We're very grateful to have her expertise and her grounding in Mount Shasta especially. And we're very excited that we've added a new board member just this week, and she's here tonight, and that's Marilyn Shemansky, who I'm sure most of you know. So she is our boots on the ground in Mount Shasta. Our goal as a county-wide Arts Council is to have representation on the board from each of the supervisorial districts. We currently have 4 members on the board representing 2 districts, so we still have a little bit of work to do. But it's very important for us to be representative of the county in which we serve. Just to give you a little, you have a handout in front of you. I'm going to go really quickly through the high points of this little agenda. Most important, which is why I want you to cut me off at 10, is that I want to talk to you about a couple of initiatives that I hope that you will be more involved with as we move forward. As I mentioned, this iteration of the Arts Council has been in existence since 2015, so we're a very young and emerging organization. We have designation as the one and only county-wide arts agency from the Board of County Supervisors, which is mandated to be a state and local partner with the California Arts Council, who provides us at this point with most of our funding to operate in the county. We're one of 53 such county arts councils in the state. And so we are directed, part of our charter is to provide financial support services and other programs specifically to local artists, arts organizations, and the communities in the county. So that's one of our main goals. We also want to promote cooperation and collaboration in planning, programming, and policy development, which is really key. I was hired in May of this year, moved up here from Southern California just to take this job, and I couldn't be happier to be here and in this position at this particular time with what I see is kind of bubbling up in many areas of Siskiyou County. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. So let's talk about, we have programs, services, and initiatives that I'd like to just hit real quickly and give you an idea of a flavor of what some of the things are that we do. So programs we consider, again, countywide, they're arts engagement opportunities or arts education. Poetry Out Loud is a national arts education program for high school students. It involves millions of students across the country who study, memorize, and recite poetry. So we're participating in that, and this year so far we have about 50% more students than we had last year involved due to a great coordinator, not me, that has recruited a lot of the high school students. It's sort of a pyramid type of structure where the local high schools participate within their own school, compete. Those winners go to a county finals, which this year we're going to have in a public place so that we can get a lot of community members, families participating as well to see these students perform. And that, as you will note, is January 27th. And hope you all will be able to have a chance to come to that, and that'll be in Wairika. So the student who wins county competition goes to the state competition in Sacramento. So we'll be taking one student to that competition this year as well. And then whoever wins from, obviously from the various state competitions goes to the national and can win up to like $20,000 in scholarships and other awards. So I think it'll be a lot of fun, and it's an important program for the high school students in the county. The other thing that we have going for us, how many of you remember the old Arts Council bus that went around? And most people do, it's great. The only problem with that bus was it kept breaking down. So we had to retire the bus, and now we've resurrected what we're calling an art cart. That will be pulled behind a car so we can take it anywhere across the county. And we have called it for now the Scraps Art Cart, because what we want to do is not only free educational activities for students and adults, but we also want them to focus on social change issues such as repurposing what we normally consider trash and is filling up our landfills into usable or very creative products. So there's a bit of eco-education involved as well as a lot of fun art making. And it gives us an opportunity to take those programs out all over the county, participating in fairs, festivals, farmers market, whatever. We're hoping to kick off that program in conjunction with Earth Day, which makes a lot of sense, on April 22nd, and we're currently in conversation with the Bioregional Ecology Center to see how we might be able to partner with them in the future. Current services are designed to support, promote, and advocate for our local artists and arts organizations, and two services we provide for them are an arts directory, which we have on our website, which is designed to connect patrons, businesses, event planners with our artists, give them additional money-making opportunities and exposure. We also have them list their, some of their artwork and their website. We also list arts and cultural organizations and venues. So trying to connect people with our artists and arts organizations. And hopefully someday we'll also have a countywide arts calendar. Joining our arts directory also automatically puts them into the True North Arts and Cultural Alliance, which is a group of 5 county arts councils. So their exposure becomes much more regional. Modoc, Tehama, Trinity, Shasta, and Siskiyou. So we're doing some collaborative efforts with those other arts councils as well. Fiscal sponsorship is another way that we support artists' arts organizations. Probably most of you know what fiscal sponsorship is. It helps us seed new creative projects, whether that's an individual artist, not a nonprofit, or it may be a new organization, also not a nonprofit. So that means they can't receive charitable contributions or grants because they're not a nonprofit. So we become a fiscal sponsor for them, provide oversight and some services for them, as well as receive those funds on their behalf. So we have a couple of fiscal sponsorship relationships. One you may already know about, which is the Jefferson Center for the Arts. Wendy James, who also owns Shasta Studios, she has just joined us in a fiscal sponsorship relationship, so we're going to be helping her get up and running. Once she does, she will no doubt have Friends of JCA, her nonprofit arm, that will allow her to do some educational programming and get those grants funds for herself. So it's a great opportunity for us to give that direct support to either individual artists or arts organizations. We have a couple of new initiatives that we're really excited about. And initiatives for us means that they're broader and deeper, still countywide. They may only happen once in a cycle. And the one that I'm most excited about to share with you tonight, and that's the other part of the handout you have, which has a lot more information than I'm going to be able to convey to you, so you have a takeaway. The Veterans in the Arts Initiative is being called Fragments and Archaeology of Memory. So we're encouraging artists to dig deep into some of those fragments of their memory, their experiences most in Vietnam, but some World War II, other battles as well, or current military. That initiative is going to be kicked off on October 26th with our centerpiece exhibition, which is going to be at Liberty Arts in Wairika. And we're bringing in a guest artist for that, who we stole the title from his body of work. 50 years after his experience in Vietnam, he is finally, excavating his own memories that he hasn't been able to deal with in 50 years through his artwork and through his writing. So it's a very powerful exhibition. And we're partnering also with Dennis Smith, who's the artist who created the sculptures in the Living Memorial Sculpture Garden in Weed. So we hope to be able to do some programming or special events there as well. So our goal is to have exhibitions in venues in every district in the county, all around the same theme going on at the same time. In conjunction with that, we want to do some additional programming, which could be, again, special events, performances, and we want to provide opportunities for creative self-expression for that population, veterans, active military, and their families. So we'll be providing some of those workshops as well in each of the various districts. And finally, we're hoping to do a school field trip program as well, where we'll have professional development opportunities for teachers in both art and history. And those teachers who participate in that professional development program will be able to bring students to, for example, the Living Memorial Sculpture Garden or possibly other exhibition venues to learn more about the history and the personal experiences of those in the military. So there's a lot more information on that in the other handout. I think the most important thing for you to take away is that we are looking for additional venues and hope to have at least one in Mount Shasta, if not more, where we can have an exhibition of veterans' artwork. So we also need help identifying local veterans who are producing artwork, whether that's writing, poetry, performance, music, or paintings, drawings. Any discipline is appropriate, so we want to focus on those artists being in those exhibitions. We also would like some help identifying the veterans in your communities who would be interested in participating in workshops. And for that, I have been working with the Siskiyou County Veterans Leadership Council in helping identify what some of those programs might be that would be the most meaningful for that population. One other initiative that we're doing is the community placemaking, which Kathy Mortar has been involved with. And it's basically, our goal is to help expand the positive impact that arts, culture, and heritage can have in our community, already does, and can have more in our communities. And generally, it's a public process whereby community members get together and talk about who they are, what their assets are, what they care about the most in their communities, how they want to communicate to the outside world about who they are and what they value, how they want to communicate to each other. So it's basically similar to what you're doing with your General Plan 2045, which is transforming or evolving Mount Shasta identity from a lumber or whatever industries that are no longer relevant. Who are we today? Who do we want to be today? And arts, culture, and heritage play obviously a very important role in our identity. So we're going to be we are working with the Siskiyou Revitalization Network, which is an offshoot of economic development, to do some pilot programs that will, for example, take us to probably Etna or Fort Jones to begin with sometime after the first of the year, and do this community gathering to talk about who we are, what is our identity, what should it be, and what we learn process and content-wise from that pilot program. We'll be putting together a grant. We're partnering with the Ford Foundation, who's helping us with this as well, and hopefully we'll get some additional funds to take that identity building, placemaking program to all the communities in Siskiyou County. So we very much want to work with those communities who are already working with some of those issues within your own community. And the last thing I have to say is that we're here to build the future together. And we welcome your comments and suggestions about what you think the Arts Council could be doing to support and enhance the efforts that you all are doing so well. We want to be part of that. We want to collaborate with you. Did I make it in 15? Okay. Woo! Woo! Any questions?
I have a couple, just questions. Eugene, should we want to get back to you regarding the specifics you requested feedback on, or just anything in general? Is the email at the bottom the one that you would like us to connect with, the contact
Yeah,
at
on the
Siskiyou
bottom of the
Arts?
veterans
Yeah, okay.
flyer, that's perfect.
Okay, good.
Yeah, call me, email me,
Okay.
track me down.
Well, I'm very excited to have you here and
Thank you.
about the possibilities, about your county-wide approach.
Yeah,
And,
we're really
I've enjoyed
excited.
the work we've done together already.
Yeah.
Just a question I think maybe on other people's minds, as it was on mine, is what you see about, do you see a future office here in Mount Shasta, or how do you see all of that evolving, and where are you physically located now?
Right now, we're physically located at a P.O. box at Jedi, who was our fiscal sponsor in 2015, and an office space in my home. We believe, at least at this point and maybe indefinitely, that the funds that we have and receive that are put into our trust need to go back into the county. We don't need to pay for office space. We'd rather the money go into our work. But if we're dreaming big, I'd like to have us be part of a community arts center and have an office space in that. But that's down the road, if at all. Yeah, so I'm in the car a lot, love it, going around to all the counties, or the districts in the county. Thanks for
Thank you.
asking that.
Sure.
Any other
of
questions?
Eugene?
Hi, Jean. How are you?
Good.
Good. On your website, siskiyouarts.org, and it says that you are a 501c3 social profit organization, which is a new name for me. So instead of nonprofit, you're saying you're a social profit company.
I'm saying we're a nonprofit.
Okay.
We have yes. Rebecca will have a chance to speak now. She's the one
Okay.
that's really behind, and I agree with her, but she's the one that's really behind that change in terminology.
And part of that is just the same thing, but as a concept, looking at this paradigm shift in terms of nonprofit has a stigma around it very often of underpaid staff, lack of sustainability, burnout, turnaround. And part of an organization that the Soul of Money Institute, founded by Lynn Twist, is working with promoting this concept of social profit, which is nonprofit, but from the perspective of generating social change and prosperity. So we're a nonprofit, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, also trying to advocate for this concept of prosperity in nonprofits and building social, I don't want to say abundance, but yeah, prosperity.
Yeah, I've heard nonprofit, another way you could say is for purpose instead of nonprofit, because you have this negative, oh, you're not supposed to be making sort of this feeling, okay, nonprofit, you're not supposed to be making a profit or something.
Yeah.
But to say what your revenue is going towards, so you're saying you're trying to promote social change. So you're saying social profit.
Yeah, for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara.
Good observation and question. Love it. Anything else?
Anything else of Eugene? No? Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so
And
much.
welcome to Siskiyou County.
Thank you. I hope I get a chance to talk with you more individually and as a group. Thanks.
Okay, it's time now for public comment. For those of you who would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, so we welcome you to come up and share your thoughts. I have two people who have signed up, and each of you, if you don't know the routine, have 3 minutes, and please begin your comments by giving us your name, and then we'll give you a, is it a 30-second warning, Juliana?
2 minutes.
At 2.
Sorry, 2:30.
Yeah, so 30 seconds, the light will go yellow, and we just appreciate your monitoring it yourself, and we'll do our best to get you your full time. So let's start with Paul Beck. Paul?
Hi, Paul Beck, Mount Shasta Planning Commission. I have a matter that concerns me greatly regarding public safety. I didn't want to wait till our next Planning Commission meeting to bring it up. I wanted to bring it right to you guys. Something I've been seeing happen a lot, and probably 3 or 4 incidences in the last month, including one that involved myself. We're having a real problem with crosswalk traffic and lack of vehicular consideration and slowdown. I myself, on one occasion recently, had to run for my life crossing the street in front of Marketplace Insurance. And I recently saw a mother and child, and I'm trying to even remember where that was. That was just like 2 days ago, and that's what brought it back up in my mind. And then another incident in front of St. Anthony's Church, mother and child crossing crosswalk, and vehicles not, they're halfway through and they're just blasting through as soon as they get the opening, or as soon as it looks like it's safe, or in some cases not even yielding consideration to the pedestrian traffic whatsoever. This really concerns me greatly, and it irks me and gets my ire. I've had discussion with Chief Cross on it. He supports an effort to do something about it. I have calls into Chief Nicholas in Weed, and what kind of got me started on this was my last trip up there. I noticed right in the middle of the crosswalk, right on the double yellow line, they have signs with, kind of like the typical sign with the slash through it and the kind of the pedestrian walking, and something that has something like a warning for a penalty. And I know enforcement on this is going to be very, very difficult, but I think for the sake of a little bit of money, and I'd even be willing to, if we were short in the kitty, if we couldn't at least address some of the problem areas, I'd be willing to perhaps try to put together some sort of fundraiser to garner monies for, maybe we could buy 6, 7, 8, or 10 of these signs and put them at critical places in the city. In front of St. Anthony's. It's not so much a problem Main Street downtown because of the traffic light at the 4 corners at City Hall, but even maybe in front of Ace Hardware there on Castle Street. Marketplace Insurance, even though it's not heavily foot trafficked, somewhere in that vicinity, people are parking across the street, walking across the street to Poncho and Lefty's. I don't think there's a crosswalk there for them to utilize, so I don't know how effective one might be there. But just in a few key places, if we could just do something, anything, I mean, something is better than nothing, and I just really hate to see somebody get hurt as a result of this. It's been bothering me for about 60 days now, so I decided, because of the last incidents, to say something to you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. So what I hear you say is you have a real concern for pedestrian safety in our crosswalks because of unobservant or uncooperative drivers.
I have to say, I'm trying to hog for time. I didn't really want to pursue it anymore with getting a hold of Chief Nicholas and we or their public works director because it's kind of beyond my authority as a planning commissioner. And until you told me it was okay to make phone calls, I didn't want to do any of that, or unless somebody wanted Juliana or somebody else to do it. I know she's got an awful lot to do, and I want to be more on
Okay.
her.
Okay.
I'm happy to find out how
Thank
much
you.
the signs are and where to go.
Okay, I think that would be most welcome. Thank you. Okay, Dennis King.
Dennis King, Mount Shasta. What I wanted to talk tonight briefly about was what's going on in our culture, like in the past 2 months. A preponderance of what everybody refers to as sexual harassment in our society, and it's mostly against women by men in power. And it's taken a lot of ugly turns, as everybody knows. You know, the inappropriate touching, harassment, these non-disclosure agreements that have been signed by powerful people, child molestation. And from all that I gather by listening to this, it comes down to power. And it's mostly power of men over women. And it hits in virtually every aspect of our society. The movie industry, obviously, is a lot. Politics, publishing, the House and Senate, and, you know, the school board, small businesses, the hospitals, everything. And this outsized use of power against women, it puts them in a position where they're paid less and forced to do more. And, you know, it's absurd that at this point in time, we don't have a more equal society when it comes to women, minorities, ethnic groups, especially Native people. Before we moved into this building, maybe a year ago, we were over at the other building. One of our most articulate voices against Crystal Geyser came up to the microphone to make a presentation. And one of the city councilors and in that building called her out at the moment as a terrorist. And most of the people in the room booed and yelled. It was a pretty charged situation. The person who made the verbal harassment in this room is here today. And I think as a result of that, he forfeits the responsibility to hold a position of power on this city council. For a person to be considered for mayor or mayor pro temp, it's unacceptable to be giving, in the current society that we live, with all of this focus being focused on this harassment issue, to be given a position of power is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Do we have other comments from those of you in the audience? Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to thank you for your time and move on to our next agenda item. council and staff comments. Mr. Pope, have you anything to share?
Thank you, Mayor Mortar. I'm happy to announce that the Winter Magic Festival and the Light Parade that was held last Friday, by all reports, was a resounding success with very good participation by the citizens, and I think everybody, I'm told, had a very good time. And it looks like it's the type of event that will grow with each year. And so I think that's a very positive statement for the season and for some of the things the city's been working on very hard for a period of time to make sure it went smoothly, and it did. Additionally, we've been continuing our work with economic development efforts, meeting with and conversing with various development companies. We're hoping to see some proposals coming after the first year. We're also spending time reaching out to create dialogue with other development companies to hopefully generate interest in development in Mount Shasta. As far as a public announcement, cannabis applications are going to be available starting Monday, December 4th through Monday, December 11th. All the applications are online, and anybody who's interested can get them off the webpage. Thank
What was
you.
the end date, Bruce? For
Excuse
the end date again, December 4th
To
through
December 11th.
11th?
Yes.
So that's 1 week. Is there a notice in the paper? Will there be a notice in the paper? Yes? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other staff reports?
I do have one quick one. If anyone on the council does receive information on the local update of census addresses program or LUCA program, to give that to me. I'm going to be registering for the city to do the census program.
I think we may have each gotten a letter, maybe the same letter. Thank you for handling it. Okay, council member comments.
Yeah, I wanted to move the lava buds off the consent agenda because I wanted to give it a little more consideration, either for tonight's meeting or subsequent meeting. I don't really see the rush, but if you'd be willing to move it off the consent agenda, I'd appreciate it.
I guess I would say I'm willing to do that. I'm not sure what will happen with the next agenda item about mayor and mayor pro tem. It probably should be that person's
So you're saying
option,
that as soon,
but-
are you
Well,
saying
I'm-
that the new member goes into effect
The new mayor goes into effect tonight.
immediately?
Yes.
Right
uh-huh.
after that action?
Right.
Okay.
I do think that we had agreed to put that on a future agenda item at the last meeting.
We did, and what I said in response to Barb before is, yes, I'm willing to put it on this agenda for discussion later and take it out of the consent agenda. But I'm also wanting to be respectful to the process about who takes over as in the mayor position. So let's just make a call to put it at the end of the agenda, item number 12, and then if someone else is sitting here in a few moments, then they can make a determination to change that. Is that okay with everyone?
I'm happy to leave it on the consent agenda.
Okay.
And then if
But
somebody wants to pull it, we could do that.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Barb that she has a right to have some discussion here about it. So we'll just pull it from the consent agenda and put it
At the
as an agenda item, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then, given the state of the FCC at this moment, considering net neutrality, I'm wondering if you'd like to add an emergency action item for tonight so that the council consider whether or not we can request the staff to write a letter of support for net neutrality. it could be tonight, or it could be, we could look at it at future agenda items. It's just the time is of the essence here. They'll be going to vote, I think, mid-December.
Okay, I don't really see it as an emergency item, so I didn't respond by saying, yes, let's add it to the agenda. So we can discuss it during future agenda items, if you'd like, and you could say, do you want to put this on the agenda, at a future agenda item?
It's your call.
Yeah. Anybody concerned about that?
That's a good idea.
Okay. I just want to stick with our process. You know, the process has been, we can stick agenda items on if it's indeed an emergency, but this doesn't really qualify as an emergency, so it's not really within our agreed-to process, so.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Other staff comments? John, do you have anything? Nothing. Paul? Mr. Stearns? Tim?
Just to what city manager said, I thought Winter Magic was very successful and a good turnout. Hopefully everybody had a happy Thanksgiving as well, and I look forward to the coming holiday season.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll confess to having had a little resistance to diving back into city business this morning after enjoying a really nice holiday. I hope the rest of you did as well. Just to go a little more detail about Winter Magic, I really want to thank the Chamber and Visitor Bureau personnel for putting on a really fabulous event. The vision to have a light parade, I know Heather Erickson worked very hard on it, as well as many Chamber and Visitor Bureau folks. There were 22 entries for those of you who weren't there, and they were all great. And there were many people who said, well, we're going to do it next year. So, and I was very delighted, as were many people who I talked with, at how crowded the streets were. It was 3 deep in many places for several blocks, just like the 4th of July parade. So I'm really grateful to those of you who worked so hard on it, and let's hope for a successful year next year. And perhaps we could even get the city council to do a float of some sort next year. Paul, you can take the lead. I see that enthusiasm overflowing at this moment. The reindeer run, I'm told, was a real success too. There were more. I wasn't around for it. Now, Giovanni's shaking his head yes, so I heard that there were more people this year than last year. Probably not hurt any by the fabulous weather we had. Wow, what a great day we had here. No sleet this time. And the downtown decor, I want to compliment particularly the Chamber Visitor Bureau folks who stepped up and hung wreaths and decorated Parker Plaza in the absence of really clear coordination this year. And it looks very nice, and we'll be talking about how to smooth it out for next year. Appreciate all those of you who volunteered to pull that off. It's a very festive downtown we have. And we have plans to install new banners and snowflakes as the winter decor that the beautification and downtown enhancement committees have been working on. So look forward to that when they arrive. And Thanksgiving meal was a wonderful event, as it always is, the community meal here in town. Saw some of you there, including Tim, helping serve, and just so much goodwill. And many hungry people that went away, who came not just for the food, but for the camaraderie. There's just such a feeling of helping out each other and serving each other and enjoying each other's company during that day. So I want to thank the many, many volunteers who organized and showed up to deliver the meals to 150 folks, I think, in the region. as well as served at the meal itself. And lastly, just Tim reminded me of this, to encourage all of those of you who haven't already to donate to Giving Thursday. No, Giving Tuesday, the deadline for which is 8 p.m. tomorrow night. North State Giving, there are 45 or so Siskiyou County organizations hoping for your donation, and you don't have to wait until tomorrow, of course. They're already stacking them in, so hope you participate. Many, many good, worthwhile causes. Okay, then, I'd like to go to consent agenda now, unless there are any other comments. Kathy, what's the first resolution number?
CCR-17-77.
77 and then 78. Okay, thank you. City manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, November 13th, 2017, regular city council meeting. B, acceptance of Brown Act committee minutes, Beautification Committee, October 11th, 2017, and Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee, October 18th, 2017. C, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 11/8 and 11/9/17, and total gross payroll and taxes excuse me, for the period ending 11/5/17. D, monthly financial and investment report. E, authorizing the City of Mount Shasta to access federal, state, and local summary criminal history for licensing cannabis retail and cannabis industry purposes. Resolution number CCR 17-77. And lastly, F, resolution authorizing the city manager to sign and file for and on behalf of the City of Mount Shasta a financial assistance application for financing agreement from the State Water Resources Control Board for the planning, design, and construction of Tank 1 and Roseburg Water System Improvements Project. Resolution CCR 17-78. May I have a motion for approval?
I'll move that the City Council approve the consent agenda as just read, numbers A through F.
And is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Unanimous. Thank you. So for item number 8, council selection of mayor and mayor pro tem. Kathy, I understand that you'll lead that discussion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. In accordance with the Mount Shasta Municipal Code, the City Council will select a member of the council to serve as mayor and a member of the council to serve as mayor pro tem, both for a 12-month period beginning immediately upon selection. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
It's my understanding that the pro tem doesn't necessarily need to move into the mayorship position, because we discovered that last year.
That's correct.
Do you prefer nomination for mayor first or mayor pro tem first?
In any order council prefers.
What did you say, Kath?
Any order.
In any order.
Oh,
I'd like to nominate Paul for mayor pro tem. Anybody second?
Don't need a second. Don't need a second.
I'm gonna decline.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
I'd like to nominate Kathy Mortar and Tim as Mayor Pro Tem.
We doing joint nominations?
However council prefers.
Pardon?
However council prefers.
Whoever counts first. I'd like to nominate John Stackleff as Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I'll have to decline that. I won't be able to do this.
Pardon?
I will have to decline also. I won't be able to serve due to extracurricular activities. So I'd like to nominate Tim Stearns as mayor.
Is there a second to the nomination?
I don't think we need, they said they don't need seconds.
You need a second.
Pardon?
You do need a second. Nomination and a second and a vote.
We have,
Same as it would be a motion.
we have never had seconds in nominations as long as I've been on council.
Okay, well, that's not my understanding, but however council prefers.
Pardon?
That's not my understanding as to how the process works, but however council prefers. I've never seen it done without a second.
Okay, I've never seen it done with, well, I
And I have it.
don't know if I've never seen it done with, but I've been told that the protocol is seconds not required.
So can you tell us what you have on the table?
Currently, I have a nomination for Kathy Mortar as mayor, Tim Stearns as pro tem. I also have a nomination for Tim as mayor.
Yeah, I'll decline as mayor pro tem.
Can I change my nomination? I would like to nominate Kathy Mortar as mayor and Barbara Wagner as mayor pro tem.
This is why I understand we need to have a second. If we have a second, we can have a vote.
I'll second Kathy's nomination for mayor.
And I'll second Barbara's for pro tem.
All those in favor?
So
Sorry, I didn't
For
hear
both
that.
of those?
What was
we
the,
need it a little louder from you, Kath.
Sure. I have a nomination and a second for Kathy Mortar as mayor, a nomination and a second for Barbara Wagner as mayor pro tem. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Engstrom?
Yes.
Councilmember Stearns?
no?
Councilmember Stackfleth?
No.
Councilmember Wagner?
Yes.
Mayor Mortar?
Yes.
So Barbara, you'll take the pro tem seat. Okay.
Well, I thank you for your vote of confidence and trust that we'll continue to work well in the future together for this next year. Thank you for your candor. Okay, let's proceed now to item number 9, the recycling progress report. Juliana, have you a report for us?
Thank you. So just to begin with, the solid waste management is a shared duty by the finance department and the planning department. So the finance director handles our contracts and payments, and I handle general programming and planning. So I will do my best to balance the two. So the City of Mount Shasta's solid waste management, again, is a shared topic. So mainly I do the solid waste reporting and trying to achieve our mandates. So what was originally clarified to me, so when this came up in pre-agenda, I had asked the mayor, Mayor Mortar, what was asked. So a review of the state mandates and how we're doing with those was what I was charged with in my understanding. So I provided in your packets from page 39 to 41 is a series of new mandates, some of which do apply to us, some of which don't. for solid waste management. The most important of which is AB 341, which is the Solid Waste Diversion Amendment of the Solid Waste Act of 1989. So that's the main act that requires us to meet certain mandates. It requires certain reporting standards. That's the one that's most commonly amended with new improvements. So we do have a mandate that we should have a plan and element for solid waste management, and they have to have recycling and composting factors. One thing to point out for the plan and the element for solid waste is it does not have to be a city-held document. For example, we have actually ratified the county's document. So we are under the Siskiyou County Integrated Waste Management Group, which does that meets twice a year. So the last time we met was in July. Next time we will meet is in January. So that group meets. It's basically all of the jurisdictions in Siskiyou County. We discuss any mandates, and our regional Cal Recycle representative attends those meetings. So our plan currently right now aims to divert 50% of all solid waste from landfill disposal by 2020. So I did make a call to our county coordinator, Arthur Boyd, and we are actually still in good standing for all of our state mandates. We are on a waiting period for 2 of the mandates. And actually, the city of Mount Shasta in particular has an additional timeline. So we don't have our own plan and element for solid waste management, so we have some additional time to do that. Since we are entering a general plan revision, we do get additional time by the state to address certain solid waste management mandates. For example, doing waste audits, reporting, things like that. In addition to that, though, cities are required to revise their plans every 5 years. Again, we're part of the counties, which is okay, and they facilitate that process. And then we impose certain requirements on operators of large venues or events to facilitate solid waste reduction. For example, any commercial business that produces over 4 cubic yards of waste also has to have recycling, which we do facilitate right now. Let's see, we also are mandated to reuse, recycle, and develop commercial business and multifamily recycling programs. And then now we are required to report annually to the state on program process. So the first time we did that was this year. I attached our program. As you can see, that I believe that is attachment number 1. Let me double check. I'm sorry, it's attachment number 2. We don't have a lot to report on this year because we don't measure how the state would like us to measure that. We don't currently record our recycling tonnage. Most of that is facilitated through a third party. So the city does not have any integrated waste services. We do not provide any of that. We do that through a contract. So we currently contract with John Smith Sanitation and the Siskiyou Opportunity Center for our recycling program specifically. We do not have a composting program through either of those contracts. We also do not have a city-maintained service. So we do receive $5,000 from the state every year. Most of that goes to purchasing our blue bags for our blue bag program. And that is facilitated. John Smith Sanitation picks up our residential recycling from those blue bags, and then the Siskiyou Opportunity Center's contract, they pick up commercial recycling, and then they also do the sorting of that recycling and the processing. So that's our current contracts with them. Our contracts with Siskiyou Opportunity Center does not outline weighing or reporting tonnage to the state for recycling, so I was not able to report that this year, which is okay. One of the things to note is one of the state mandates requires all, let's see, I don't have it. Oh, right here, AB 901 does require all waste haulers to report as well, so they'll start reporting that. One of the questions that was posed to me about, getting that information in the future, we might already start getting that information once we get into the habit of reporting the way the state would like. So since John Smith and Siskiyou Opportunity is going to have to report it to the state, they're going to have those numbers most likely next year. They just weren't prepared to do it this year. So that's how we facilitate our recycling and composting. Most of the recycling is transported to the Sacramento area where our facilities are. That was previously done in the Medford area. Unfortunately, there was an interstate dispute about recycling, so our markets went a little bit farther away, which increased some of the cost to the city to facilitate these, as well as cost to the waste haulers. which is why you might have seen a slight decrease in the types of materials that we were able to take recently. We are working with Cal Recycle, as well as the Office of Planning and Research, as well as other state boards to facilitate recycling in our area, as well as composting. The other AB 876, compostable organics, requires that commercial businesses, specifically restaurants, begin a composting program for their commercial waste. We have a 5-year exemption from that policy due to our size and ability to meet that mandate. So we are currently 1 year into that 5-year timeline. So that's pretty much the general gist of what the city is doing. The city's current general plan does have 2 goals. I just stated the one in the land use. So there is one in land use, and then there is one in conservation about maintaining our recycling programs. There is no explicit language on composting. We do want to maintain the county integrated waste management plan. So we do participate in those meetings twice a year to do that. And that's pretty much all we do as far as, city programming. As I said before, this is a shared responsibility between the finance department and the planning department, and that is pretty much the maximum amount of staff resources that we can give to this topic at this time without other staff available to help with other programs. And then I did write a memo after our last meeting on April 24th, 2017 about the solid waste management system. So this was asked of me a while back. City staff cannot move forward on improving any integrated solid waste systems or services without consistent funding. And what that means is not necessarily grant options, because that wouldn't maintain our services, but we would need to do a 218 process to properly establish a solid waste fund. You currently do collect funds on the city bills, which you did in a previous 218 for refuse, but that does not include funding for recycling and composting specifically. We do use part of that waste funding to pay for our current recycling, but if you want to increase services or streamline our services, you would have to do a 218 process to install that fee or upgrade your solid waste fee. The other option you have as far as consistent funding is to impose a goods and services tax. So it would basically be in addition to sales tax. Other places that have had success with this do a bottle tax, or what they call a materials tax. So anything that's made of glass gets so in certain places I've seen bottles specifically. If a sale of a glass bottle is made, 5 cents of that is put towards recycling or solid waste programs. And then for plastic, it was, I believe, a penny each. Some places have done that and had very good success as far as voter turnout, and they've had a good opportunity of collection. The argument for the goods and services over a 218 process says that the less of those materials people use, the less you need to provide for their recycling process. So that you're taxing basically the good that's using the service. So as I stated before, right now, the current priority of the planning department is to do the general plan. The general plan does include waste audits and other factors of integrated solid waste. There are some requirements that were in the original AB 341 that we would integrate solid waste into that. So part of that is going to be addressed in the next 3 to 4 years. And as I stated before, we do get an additional exemption period because we are going into that process on some of the bills, specifically composting. And then in addition to this, if the city council does wish to move forward in a shorter timeline and to do more services than anticipated, additional staff are needed to do that, to focus on that, and you would need to do consistent funding. Grant dollars in this case would not be advisable because those are not maintainable. We would pursue a grant in the case of facilitating a 218 process, but I would not advise seeking a grant that would only cover recycling services for 3 or 4 years, which is what we're traditionally seeing. So that's where we're at right now. I intended this for information only. If you would like to direct staff, you're really the only avenues that we see at this point, this is a shared point from the finance department and planning, is that you need to figure out how you're going to approach the financing of these services, because we currently do not offer any of them from the cities.
Thank you, Juliana. Any questions of Juliana from council members before we go to public comment? Yes, Tim?
Yeah, Juliana, it could be before you came to Mount Shasta, we were informed about the 5-year deferral. And I half facetiously bet that we wouldn't do anything in advance of that 5 years because we were given the 5-year term period. And I was assured that we would be actively working on the recycling program despite the 5-year deferral. My most immediate concern is Siskiyou Opportunity Center has reduced the amounts and types of materials that it will take. What has the city staff done in terms of Siskiyou Opportunity Center and or contacting alternatives like, Siskiyou Recycling up in Wairika or some third party?
So I have been in contact with third party. So I've done solid waste in other states. And there's actually a private company that is located in San Francisco that I've worked with that is pretty reputable in not only recycling, but also composting, as industrial composting. The issue that we have here is we don't have the economies of scale that a large city does. And so for a large regional facility to come in to facilitate recycling and composting, they would need to have a waste audit done prior to that. We have programmed a waste audit into the general plan. And so what a waste audit is, it's a random collection basically of trash throughout the city. Is so when people put their trash on the street, it becomes public domain. So I can go through your trash. I wouldn't do that, but we can, it's different. But we collect those, we go through and we measure basically how much of that is legitimate trash, how much is recycling, how much is composting, and we can actually calculate out the economic value of what that would be. In a sense, it's like calculating a regional market for any type of other good or service. We would need that data prior to them making an investment in the city. They're interested in coming up here because we do not have a large-scale recycling or composting producer, but we would have to invest the time and money into doing that waste audit prior to that. In addition to that, one of the difficulties the Siskiyou Opportunity Center has, meeting with them, is there is no longer a market for recyclables. The price that we get as a reimbursement for recyclables has significantly dropped in the last few years, and we're just not able to really make the dollar make sense. So we're spending more money to recycle than we're receiving by recycling that good. In a sense, it's cheaper to landfill it. That's not necessarily taking into account the environmental impact, but the other issue we have with, we have talked with the Wairika branch as well. They already have enough issues with dealing with North County. The issue, like I said, the issue we have is we don't have the economies of scale to attract a large facility, but we do have more refuse than we're able to deal with. So, like I said, the group does meet twice a year. We do continually talk about these things, about how we're going to meet them. At our last meeting, Cal Recycle came in because we are one of the worst counties dealing with this issue right now. Like I said, we had a better time in the past because we were able to use the regional markets in Medford rather than Sacramento, which was a lot cheaper for transportation costs. We don't have that now. So we are struggling to do it. Cal Recycle is assisting us with trying to identify avenues. There has been a discussion about additional funds at the state level to supplement recycling programs. So as I stated before, we already get $5,000 from the state, but that's not nearly enough to meet our costs. Talking with Muriel earlier today, $5,000 from the state basically just allows us to buy the blue bags per year. And then each month we spend $990, so about $1,000 for John Smith just to pick up our residential recycling. And then it costs about $1,200 for Siskiyou County or Siskiyou Opportunity Center to do the commercial collection and sorting. So we're spending $1,300 a month, roughly $45,000 to $48,000 a year, and we're only getting $5,000 of that reimbursed from the state. So we have talked with Cal Recycle about possibly upping that for rural counties. We haven't received any word back. Like I said, I should be meeting with them in January or February of next year to see where those negotiations went. That would probably be our best option other than imposing a local assessment or tax. That's just kind of where we are. We have been in contact with a few other, like I said, I've been in contact with private as well as other types of industries that would take these, but without an adequate waste audit or without additional funding from the state, we're struggling to do that. So we're kind of running out of a lot of options. So we're going to go forward with a waste audit as part of the general plan, and that's pretty much all I can do right now in my capacity.
I'd like to follow up with some additional questions.
In a second. Can we wait till the train passes? Okay, Tim, try it again.
Thanks. Have you contacted Bigfoot down in Reading? Bigfoot Recycling?
Sorry, it's whistling. Let's just wait. This is part of the culture, right? Waiting for the train to pass. It does. We live in a place where not everything happens lickety-split. Can we give the train 3 minutes?
I wish. I think you could probably do it if you speak in the microphone.
Go ahead, Tim. Let's try again.
All right, so my question, Juliana, was have you contacted Bigfoot Recycling down in Reading?
I haven't contacted them specifically, but I mean, if there is a regional one that would be interested in coming up here, I don't mind talking to them. Like I said, I talked to a few that I'm familiar with. One out of San Francisco is the big one that I worked with out of Wisconsin. And then there was one in Red Bluff that I contacted as well. Like I said, most of them would like to see a waste audit done. And I have actually talked to Arthur Boyd at the county as well about doing a county-wide waste audit, because that would increase our likelihood of attracting a regional facility that could, basically make ends meet by using the entire county's supply of materials as opposed to just us. And there is a possibility of doing that, and we're exploring some grants to possibly do the waste audit at a county level. But I'm not actively looking for that. Arthur is, and he'd be a better person to ask.
Are you willing to contact Bigfoot Recycling and inquire?
Not without additional staff to cover my other duties.
Okay, well, I understand from your report that one of the problems is lack of staffing, that you basically are a one-person planning department.
And Muriel is also working on this as well.
And she has staffing limitations as well, correct?
Yep.
And would that be one of the reasons why there are only 2 meetings rather than an increased frequency of meetings?
No, actually the meetings, so the Solid Waste Integrated County Authority, that's put on by Siskiyou County, and they are the ones who call it twice a year.
Has our city staff done a cost-benefit analysis, looking at the cost of hauling increased weight to the transfer station versus perhaps additional subsidy to SOC or some other entity that would be diverting materials.
That would be part of the waste audit.
Hasn't been done yet.
No.
But I'm not asking about materials per se. I'm asking about, obviously, because Siskiyou Opportunity Center is picking up or accepting fewer materials for recycling, I would think that the city is paying more for hauling.
We'd have to take a look at it. So part of that cost-benefit analysis also can look at our projections, which is why you would partner it with a waste audit, because you can also take a look at, how much of each type of material that you could easily defer with other investments. For example, composting facilities. We could easily do that within our regional area without a large amount of environmental impacts. For example, recycling can be a very dirty industry, where industrial composting can be pretty benign. So part of that cost benefit goes with that waste audit. So if we're not hauling as much organic waste, you may not have to haul as frequently. There are some other things that go into that. So I would put that forward. We have not done one yet. Like I said, I would partner that with the waste audit when we do it.
All right, following up on that, how much staffing would a waste audit take, in your opinion? How much time would it take in terms of days, weeks, or months? And how much do you anticipate a waste audit would cost?
I couldn't tell you what the cost would be in California, but the ones that I've participated in or managed in other states can be anywhere from a 4-week period, which I would not recommend, to I would recommend about a year to a year and a half collection only, because you want to get a variety of different collections. Obviously, there's more waste produced on December 26th than there is on May 2nd. So you want a full year of random sampling. I would, it's going to depend on, if we are able to partner with the county, that would be great. That would take a lot of time off. It's a very intensive procedure, because what you basically do is you set a random sampling throughout the city, you collect random trash cans, and then you basically hand sort through that. So you have to be OSHA certified and you have to have supervision. So at a minimum, you would want to have 2 people on that team doing the sorting at any given time. Then you have to set how frequently you want people to sort, and if you're going to do randomized days. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And again, like I said, I would not be able to do it as someone who has participated in one before. So we did a 6-month audit with 2 people, and it cost about $55,000. And that was for subpar, not California wage. So if that gives you an idea, and it was not nearly as intensive as I think it should have been. That's the one that I got a grant for, but, I can't ballpark you a number without going out for a request for qualifications and proposals. I wouldn't know, because the other thing too is we might not have that type of expertise in this area of the state. So that if that's what's being asked of me, is to project those things, I would need additional time to do a little bit more research on what I'm seeing from other similar jurisdictions, and I would have to do more scoping on what that would look like. Ideally, I wouldn't do it just for the city of Mount Shasta. Like I said, I would partner with the county, because the more county data you can get, the better you're going to look to a larger facility. Because we're not going to produce enough waste to really attract someone who wants to invest that much money in refuse reuse.
I think I'll have some more questions, but let's
Okay.
just want people to
Yeah, thank you. Other folks who have questions for Juliana?
Yeah, I've got a question. So other cities in California, you have 3 cans, residential, you have 3 cans, one for trash, one for recyclables, and one for yard waste. And if we were to set up something like that also, and did not have a local recyclery to deal with it, do you know if the recycleries such as in Reading would actually be forced to take our material if we were going to do a 218 process and then pay the fees through the garbage rates?
So, yeah, I mean, you're going back to the main issue. We can do that. You can do a 3-bin system. That's not the issue. The issue is we don't have money to facilitate initial capital cost. We do not have money to facilitate those types of services. So right now, we as the city do not do those services. So you would have to have people, things like that. So that's why I think that's the initial question you have to ask. It's not that we can't do this. We can do this. We just do not have the consistent funding right now to set this up and go forward.
So then the implication is you have to go through a 218 process, increase rates, find out, well, how much they have to be increased to finance.
Or a goods and services tax. I mean, it's up to how you guys want to do that. I think a combination of the two would be better, but you would most likely have goods and services tax more politically feasible at this time because you just did a 218 for other services.
Yeah, so this deferral, 5-year deferral, as it comes up to, will we be able to get another deferral, or is that going to be the end of it?
No, so the current deferral that we're in is only composting for restaurant facilities, which is not too hard for us to meet. The initial issue is attracting a regional facility. As far as forcing Reading to take our refuse, we can't really force them. Working with them, so this, like I said, so these integrated solid waste management groups is every single district in the county. So we're all trying to figure this out. We are not the only one that is not able to do this. I know Dunsmuir the municipality is talking about starting a municipal composting facility. Unfortunately, those are heavily regulated here in California, along with everything else. And so, we have that option. I mean, there could be a joint powers ability for us to go forward with a facility, but the biggest thing right now is, I'm not too worried about it with the 4-year deferral for the composting. We are getting better, or we're attempting to get better at it, and we have a little bit better knowledge of the issue. So one of the big mandates that we had starting July 1 of this year was reporting. We weren't doing that before, and so the state kind of has backed off mandating or penalizing jurisdictions because they're not meeting the numbers they had come up with, and they're trying to go to the reporting to try and figure out who's having bigger issues than others. Obviously, because we are a spatially diverse and expansive county, we're going to have different issues from San Francisco, especially, like I said, with the scale of our waste. But, moving forward, it could come to a point where going to Reading or working with the municipalities of Reading with a joint powers facility to do that. That could be an option, and that might be the best option for us. There's just, like I said, you have to do the waste audit first to see what your baseline is. And we have to, like Councilmember Stearns brought up, we have to look at that cost benefit of hauling it there, and if there is an ability for us to do that. Because, shipping it into another county and at Reading, again, if we as a city start offering that service, we would probably have to pay franchise or have to work out some type of agreement for them to do that. And again, that's an added cost. I think you need to figure out your consistent funding source first to make sure that we're doing this right and making sure we have a good amount of, okay, this is what we have to deal with. These are projected. This is the fee that we would have to pay to deal with it. It's very difficult to institute a program before you're able to afford to do it.
I don't understand what consistent funding source there is except the rate, the garbage rate charge. I mean, are you talking about another sales tax of sorts, or what?
You can do a goods and services tax. It has been done in other places. Like I said, it's some places it's called a bottle tax because they only tax bottled water or bottled sodas. There have been other places that do a materials tax. So if it comes in packaging, they tax it a certain amount. If it's cardboard, they tax it a certain amount. If it's plastic, if it's glass. That's a little bit more involved as far as the calculation piece, but if you're looking at the 218 process as someone paying a service to the city to do something, or if you tax the people who are using the system, that's kind of the different side. I mean, they're both a little bit more involved. I'm trying to simplify it, but you have those two options. And some people do a combination of the two. So they do the 218 to cover their pickups. They do it for the processing, and then they do a materials tax for special programming to improve the services. So you can do a combination of the two as well.
Any questions, Paul?
So there's no money in recycling anymore?
No, there is in composting if you can get it running.
Yeah, and what's the likelihood of us bringing in somebody for-profit business for composting. Is that happening around different areas, do you know?
It can, and we actually are a good candidate for it. So like I said, I have been working with a previous company that I have worked with previously. I like the way that they conduct their business, and they were nice to work with in Wisconsin and Minnesota. They are a for-profit composting facility. But yeah, their big thing right now is they're interested in the area. They think there would be a good for-profit, there would be a good one, but they want to see the waste audit first and then work with us as far as, to make sure that the economics work for it. As we see more political support in the state of California to move to composting facilities, a lot of those people will get a little bit more bold because there'd be less risk, because you basically have a mandated waste stream that's going to be coming from all of these different places. As far as smaller scale, I know that, so the Siskiyou Economic Development Council is the manager of a waste district. A waste, like a recycling market district. They would have more information on it, but basically the state is offering incentives through SCEDC to for-profit businesses to promote recycling goods. And I know that they've had that district for about a year or two now. I'm not quite sure how it completely works. If I do ever hear of anyone, I usually point them to that direction. We've tried to point a few artists who use reusable materials to go to them to get that tax. I think it's a tax incentive and maybe a low rate loan for equipment. But there have been some, I believe there is a small scale vermiculturist in Reading, or they might be in the county. I can't remember if they're in Shasta County or not, but I know that they're part of that district where they're benefiting and they're trying to do vermiculture, which is using worms to do a recycling type program. That is an option to do. So obviously there's the argument you can do one large regional facility, or you can do a number of multiple smaller facilities. That takes a lot of entrepreneurial activity to do, which is not really the purview of my department at this time. Right. Like I said, if this does become a priority of the council, you can decide to reprioritize the department's priority. Right now, I'm prioritizing the general plan as per direction from the council. But if your direction is to facilitate entrepreneurial activity of for-profit, waste haulers, or if solid waste becomes a higher priority than the general plan, that is something we can dedicate time to. It does take quite a bit of nursing because you have to have people interested in that type of business. Not just, okay, I'm going to make $1 here. You have to be pretty savvy on what's going on. It's not out of the question. It's something that we could work with other agencies to do. But yeah, like I said, SCEDC would have more information on for-profit recyclers because they're most likely in that district or marketing, not marketing, the recycling district.
What was the problem with the interstate disagreement?
My understanding is that a significant amount of California waste haulers or California residents were taking recyclables to Oregon because you could get more money for the plastic and more money for the aluminum from their government. And so they were finding that people from California were using the system. That's my understanding of the issue. It may have just been a dispute as far as, Oregon was taking more of California's waste than California was, without having any tax reimbursement or anything like that.
Okay, one more question. Do you see any possibilities of grants coming for the audits?
Like I said, we are working with Siskiyou County to discuss it. It was on the last meeting to talk to CalRecycle, and our understanding was CalRecycle was looking into pressuring the legislature to open up funding for recycling. My understanding is they have opened up some program funding or are going to. As far as if that would apply to planning or waste audit, I haven't taken a look yet, but I know that we're probably going to talk about that in January or February. And we do look more competitive if we are partnered with other districts. So going to that group and having that group apply for those grants, as opposed to the city individually doing that, would probably be more successful.
Thank you.
Wow, lots of questions.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure I understood you correctly. When you said that we're supposed to divert 50% of our waste stream by 2020. And I think I heard you say we're on track for that, county?
My understanding, so when I talked to Arthur last week, Tuesday or Wednesday before the holiday, he said that we are completely in compliance as of right now for the county. So
They obviously established some kind of baseline that they're measuring that 50% off of. That means that did they conduct an audit in order to get?
I know that we discussed that there was an audit a few years back. I couldn't tell you when it was. I would assume it was the 5-year mark, because we are supposed to be updating that plan every 5 years. But I can get more information on that and reply back with the specifics of when that happened and what our baseline is.
So you're saying that countywide audit includes the numbers for our city waste?
Correct.
In other words, they go into every city and they're doing their, if there is this audit.
Ideally, they might not have done it that way. So waste audits can happen a number of different ways. The way I'm talking about is probably the most high, the finer tooth comb of the assessments that you can do. Other ways of doing it is you can do selective sorting at transfer stations. You can do it through regional facilities as well and take a look at what they're getting. I know there's quite a few regional facilities that I worked with that take a constant stream. They basically sort constantly to see what they're getting, and so they have an up-to-date audit at all times. We're not that fancy. But, there's a number of different ways to conduct it, and I'm not quite sure how they conducted their last audit, if they did do an audit. And I'm not quite sure what our baselines are at the moment, and if they did include composting at that time, because composting has been a new thing, and I mean new by like a decade. So they might not be. And the other thing too is, like I said, the state is having us report now annually, and so I think they're trying to collect some of this data for the state. And how they're collecting data is different from how they previously had the counties reporting out. So we're reporting tonnage now. And sometimes before they just said, what is an estimated percentage of your stream? And sometimes they're estimates, sometimes they're the actual tonnage. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
So there are other communities participating in these biannual meetings. Are there other communities that, in your assessment, having sat in them, feel as accountable as we appear to feel for accomplishing progress toward the requirements set out in these various bills? Yes, there are.
Yeah, and we don't just do we don't just do actual. The word's escaping me, actual jurisdictions, like city jurisdictions, it's also the community districts as well. So there's a pretty active community services district near the Fort Jones area that's incredibly involved. There's us, and then there is Dunsmuir, are probably the top 3 who are trying to do this. Wairika as well, because they are the main hub for the county. It has been struggling to do this, but all of the jurisdictions are welcome to those meetings. Those are the 4 that probably actively participate. And Muriel's been in my seat prior to me taking that, and I know that she's always been fairly vocal and active in those meetings. Not that the other cities aren't thinking about this as well. Everyone else does send representatives as much as they can.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I know that have been consistently there the last few times I've gone.
So I like what you say about partnering with other communities in the county. It would certainly make us more interesting to either a profit or a nonprofit. I wonder about the advisability of sending a message from us to Arthur and the county folks at your next meeting that we would like to assess the possibility for developing an assessment of what it would take to do a joint composting facility in the county. Number one, and to get this audit done. I don't know if the county's feeling more accountable than I am right now, but the time is passing. So So it seems that it would be a good use of that committee's time as you get together to look at doing these assessments that would compare our options. What are our options? Pretending or assuming that when that 5 years is up, and are we 2 years into it? 1 year into it. That we're 1 year, assuming that there's a drop dead date. What are our options, and have that feasibility, that those alternatives fleshed out so that we can assess our part of it. I would ask you to, and I don't know if you need formal direction from the council, to take that up as an agenda item at your next meeting.
I was going to suggest, yeah, I can set an agenda item on your behalf, if you would like.
Is there any disagreement from the council on any of that? Just to ask that we get out of the next meeting some progress made on assessments about how to accomplish the alternatives for the composting piece of it and the audit piece of it. And number two, the other suggestion I have is, Kathy, your newsletter, you mentioned somewhere in your report, Juliana, which has been very thorough, thank you, that we've done no public outreach. It strikes me that there's an opportunity using the newsletter to do some of that, to explain, to encourage people to use the Blue Bag program, to encourage people to take their materials to Siskiyou Opportunity Center, and thirdly, to perhaps recruit for an effort to organize trips to Wairika. We take our recycling to Wairika all the time, and if there was any organized way to do it, we could coordinate with others who have recycling that they could drop off that the Siskiyou Opportunity Center doesn't take. So it might be something that we could encourage, just voluntary participation in around organizing those trips to Wairika. Something for you to consider, Kathy, as you're putting together your list of topics for the next issue.
And I'm wondering if we should go ahead and consider, can we, what's the point of order right now? Can I-
We are discussing, well, that's right. That was, what I just offered really wasn't a question, was it? They weren't clarifying questions. What I should do next is go to public comment.
I just want to
I have
really.
some additional questions.
Oh, you have more questions. Sorry, Tim.
I
Sorry.
indicated
I
that.
forgot.
Thank you. When does the John Smith sanitation contract expire?
That would be a good question for Muriel, and I can get back to you on that.
Okay, appreciate you doing that.
Would you send those out by email, those updates?
And I can send you the Siskiyou Opportunity as well, if you'd like. They're kind of intertwined. I believe you did just confirm the John Smith last year. Yeah. So I would assume they're on a 3 or 5 year cycle.
When is the next solid waste meeting that
I
occurs
believe
semi-annually?
we should be meeting in January or February, but I can let the council know when I go. If
Will
you'd like.
you notify us at least a week in advance?
They usually send
Preferably
them
2
out.
weeks in advance of the meeting.
I believe they send them out about a week in advance.
And you'll let us know?
Yeah. I'll send it to Kathy Wilson so that.
Has
it's
there
a-
been any discussion yet with the county, with other agencies, about the increasing recycling issue as a result of cannabis production?
So that's a very good, so that's a completely separate thing that the state wants to keep separate. So cannabis refuse or cannabis waste is not allowed to enter into the regular system. And so one of the things we have to ensure is that they have on-site disposal for cannabis refuse. And that's very highly managed by the state. It's going to be an interesting thing as we start to go into the cultivation pieces of our local ordinance. But what they are required to have is on-site, when they submit site plans to us for their license, they do have to basically put on their site plans where they're going to be storing their refuse. It has to be in an enclosed area, and it has to be under 24-hour camera surveillance. And then if they have an excessive amount of waste from the cultivation or product manufacturing, that has to be dealt with through a state-approved waste hauler, which none of ours in this county are. So we're kind of on standby for that one. It's going to be a gray area. So what I have been advised by the state is that they're going to do on-site storage within their contained areas that they should be outlining. And then we'll be working with the state about adequately dealing with that waste. But ideally, they do not consider cannabis waste part of the integrated solid waste plan at this point.
Okay, you indicated that you don't really have time yourself to be working on the recycling issue because you're focused on the general plan. Would you be open to the possibility of having one or more interns or volunteers to work with you on recycling issues?
If they have knowledge of integrated solid waste systems, then I would be fine to find that person, but I don't necessarily know if we have anyone like that. If they want to come talk to me, that's fine. I also don't have an anticipated budget line item for an intern. So that's that's a different issue. Ideally, what should happen is, again, like the funding, the staff needs to be consistent. We need someone who's going to be able to be here more than 6 months or a year. We need an additional person in either the finance department or the planning department to handle other duties to allow us to spend a lot more time on this. Because, you know, it is helpful to have someone there for initial programming, but the problem that we have as a small city is to maintain that programming. We tend to get into a cycle where we start things and then we don't anticipate the sustainability of it. So although interns would be somewhat of a relief temporarily, I don't think it would necessarily solve the main problem.
Well, let me ask you this. Again, when this issue of 5-year deferment first came up, I did make a bet that we would wait until just before the 5 years to address the issue, rather than actively working to address the issue in a more timely fashion. So, if the city had to meet state standards in 2 years instead of 4 years, what does city staff recommend we do now to achieve compliance within that time frame?
I would recommend that you figure out a consistent funding source, either going through the 218 process or establishing a goods or services tax. You need initial funding to provide these services, and that's the biggest issue right now.
And the proposal was made for possibly gathering materials together to take up to Wairika that are not recycled through Siskiyou Opportunity Center. Has city staff considered the possibility of having bins where newspapers and cardboard can be deposited and then taken up periodically to Wairika or elsewhere?
So the Siskiyou County Integrated Waste Management has offered, they have some large recycling bins that they got through a grant that they will come and service every so often. I'm not sure if they collect newspaper or cardboard, but that is an option. As far as, you know, the county providing it, it can be something I bring up at the next integrated waste meeting, but that's pretty much where we're at.
I'm not sure I fully caught that. Sounds like the county has bins available that they've offered to the city. Is that correct?
And we have them. There's one in the park, and then I believe there's one at Shasta as well.
Okay. And what are we doing with those bins at the present time?
We do not do anything. That's completely facilitated through Siskiyou County.
Can the staff look into the possibility of having bins for newspapers and for cardboard? Because Siskiyou Opportunity Center does not take newspapers, does not take cardboard, and both of
Nor
those...
cans.
Huh?
Nor cans.
Nor cans, that's right.
So I do know the one here does take cans, but again, like I said, I can ask to set it on the next agenda for the Siskiyou Integrated Waste. That's pretty much all I can do at this moment.
Regardless of whether it's the integrated Siskiyou waste, can the city initiate a program like that? And I'm asking and encouraging staff to look into seeing if that can become a reality along with what the mayor indicated, of our providing place for people to bring their cardboard, to bring their newspaper, to bring their cans.
So as previously stated, we need to find a consistent funding source before we can start providing more services.
When you say consistent funding source, what consistent funding source are you referring to that would be required to have one bin with 3 parts, or 3 bins, one for cans, one for cardboard, one for newspapers, with the idea of perhaps taking them up to Wairika on a monthly basis, or whatever it happens to be?
We would have to go either through a 218 process to institute a solid waste, so to either increase the fee that we make people pay now to provide more services like that, or we would have to do a goods and services tax.
Well, it could also come out of general fund, presumably. Wouldn't it be helpful if someone looked at what the actual costs would be?
We would do that when we come with a recommendation, but we don't know what city council direction is, whether you would prefer a 218 or a goods and services tax. And as far as coming from the general fund, I've already worked on this recommendation with our finance director, who agrees that you would need an additional source of funding to pay for these additional services.
And it'd be helpful to know approximately how much money we're talking about.
Once you decide if you would rather do a 218 or goods and services, we can move forward with that recommendation.
I'd like to bring this conversation to a close soon. So I think we've heard the points. But so before we draw it to a conclusion, I'd like to ask if there's any public comment. Okay, seeing none. I'm sorry, you have to, yeah, if you'd like to comment, then you need to come up to the podium, and you have 3 minutes, Rebecca.
I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate the research that you've put into this, and also say that composting, especially with newspapers and cardboard, if there's a way to create regenerative systems that doesn't require more fossil fuels transporting them over the mountains, that would be a fine direction to move in. Oh, thank you.
There's one thing I was unclear about, Juliana. You said that the county committee, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the name of it, that meets biannually, has provided bins for us, that we have some in the parks, the ones that we see, those large bins, and they cover the coordination and the cost of those things.
Correct.
What would it take? Would it be possible to request of them that we have bins placed in town for cardboard and or paper at no additional cost to the city? Or number one, or number two, would there be, what would it cost us to have, if we decided it was a priority for us, what would it cost us to have that service?
Yeah, like I said, I'd have to set an agenda item at the next meeting, because my understanding at this point is that there are no more of those. So they got those on a grant from the state to provide those, and they facilitate the pickup and servicing of it as well. So I would have to set that at the agenda and put in that request to see what we could possibly do.
Okay, I'd like to suggest, I think that you've answered our questions well. I think I've seen you write down a lot of things. I'd like to propose that we get an update from you following the January or February meeting, which you've let us know about in case we'd like to attend beforehand. Give us an update following that, and then we'll decide from there what kind of direction we may want to give you beyond what we've asked you to forward to that first meeting in terms of an agenda.
I have a quarterly planning staff meeting at the county in December, so I can see what the availability of the solid waste division is, and schedule a meeting as well and try and follow up with you in December.
Interesting, great. Well, I think we could tell by the number of questions and and the length of response, that this is no easy subject, but it's one of, I think, a lot of interest on the part of council members as well as our town. So, thank you. Barbara?
As far as a constant funding stream, I would definitely support the bottle tax, the material tax, since those are the people that are mostly generating the landfill material or recycling material. So I would prefer that route as opposed to an additional trash fee. I would lean more towards that tax, and I don't know if if we wanted to get that on this ballot coming up, it'd be good to know some of those time frames associated with that.
Personally, I am not interested in doing an additional tax on this ballot. I think we have alternatives to, I agree, I would prefer that one over raising rates, but I don't know, I don't think, the timing just doesn't feel right to me. So particularly until we've investigated all of our other options through leveraging at the county level.
Yeah, and then, if you don't mind, can I say another comment? Just following up on Rebecca's comment, paper, newspaper, and cardboard, they're made from tree pulp, so those things can just go back to dirt. So yeah, it is a waste to haul this away. It's a waste to collect this and then find some way to transport it to where, who knows where. The best thing to do for carbon footprint is to find a piece of land owned by the city, for example, Roseburg, some corner where you can actually dispose of your cardboard and your newspaper and let it decompose back into the earth. And some of that also, drywall is also decompostable. There's some construction materials. As far as compost shingles that go on the roof, it's the biggest contribution to landfill. So.
Well, thank you. I think we did ask Juliana to pass on the agenda item that would have us look at a joint composting site. Can we move on, folks? Okay, I'd like to. Thank you. Okay. The next item on our agenda is discussion and possible action of a city development impact fee for new residential construction. Bruce, may we hear from you?
Thank you. I put this item on the agenda because we were contacted by a developer who's contemplating building apartment building and single-family homes in the resort area, which is in the county, but is within our sewer connection system. In looking at the record on the fee reduction program the previous council put in place, it isn't completely clear if the council wanted this program reserved only to buildings built within the city limits, or that it wanted to use it to stimulate the housing market in the housing market, which could extend beyond the city limits. What brings us to the point is this development will be using city services. Since there was no clarity available, we put this on the agenda so the council could clarify what you want your intent to be. You have, on the fee basis, you have the ability to set different fees on this item. So you do not have a consistency issue to deal with here. I drafted a resolution that says to approve that these discount programs available for housing within the market area but outside the city. That was drafted to give you a document to respond to. You're obviously under no obligation to adopt it. Your purpose in this issue is to clarify what your policy is.
Thank you. Questions of questions of Bruce from council members?
Would you say that this initiative provided a quantity of 30 reduced by 75% fees for connection to water and sewer, is what I understand.
For sewer.
Oh, just for sewer, not for water, okay. And this one application, one of the 30 was requested so
Yeah,
far.
we have, to date, the city has issued, approved one development under this program out of the 30 that were possible. This would be the second application.
Oh, you've already approved one, and that was in city limits, and it's just the second one that's now outside city limits.
Correct.
That brought to question. And this is in the resort area, so more of a low density, more higher income, you could say, bracket for housing.
Correct.
Okay. And the first application was similar, was also kind of more low density application, do you remember?
I'm not familiar with the
You don't
first
know familiar, okay.
application.
All right,
Precedes my arrival.
okay. Maybe Tim remembers, no?
Other questions? I was under the impression, Bruce, that we have built like 5 homes or so in the last year, or at least approved plans to build 5. I'm wondering why we didn't get an application for this reduction in connection fee for all of them, or were some of them, you don't know?
I do not.
Okay.
I have checked with Public Works, and they said we had granted one.
Okay.
So I can address that if you'd like.
Excuse me.
I can address that if you'd like. Sorry, we've had a lot of interest into the rates, but we've only had one go through the process. So even though we may have other building permits in the works, they have not fully finished the process of applying for
I
that.
see. Okay.
So one of the
Okay.
things that we have to do is get an occupancy permit, and so we've only had one person achieve an occupancy permit as of right now.
Okay.
So we have people in the works. My understanding is the first application was a single-family dwelling unit, a single-family home. And the rest of them, like I said, I have, from at least my office's perspective, have had a lot of interest. But as far as people following through, I'm not quite sure.
Thank you. Other questions, staff? Okay. Would any of you in the audience like to offer a comment? Yes, sir.
My name's Scott Dolphin. I am a general contractor here, and I kind of brought this issue to Mr. Pope. I don't know if you've read the resolution as it's on the website, but it is not very clear by any means that it was restricted to construction within the city limits. And so I've moved ahead and spent money developing plans for a fourplex at the golf course area, and I have a client who would like me to be building them a home as well. And the only reason I stumbled across this was by calling to see how many permits were used up at this point, and was told you have to be within the city limits, and that was quite a shock to me. Seems a little discriminatory to a certain extent, to eliminate people who use the city system and who have paid the fees. I've built numerous projects in the subdivision, and I watched a one-time $1,500 sewer connection fee in 4 years go to $12,500 per connection fee. And I've paid all of those fees over the years. So it seems, like I said, a little discriminatory to leave out people who are paying monthly dues and paying the hookup fees to the city, to eliminate them. The resolution that was passed is trying to promote growth, promote jobs in the community. I mean, I live 0.3 miles from the city limits. As far as I'm concerned, I live in Mount Shasta. So this would be kind of a, unfortunately, historically, there's been a lot of black eyes in the building community from the city. And I think that's something